US and Russian flags, moments of cooperation in history. Throughout history, the United States and Russia have often found themselves on opposite sides of global conflicts. But, despite their long-standing rivalry, there have been several key moments where these two powers collaborated for the greater good. From space exploration to arms control agreements, in this video, we will look at major instances where the US and Russia worked together. World War II Alliance, 1941 to 1945. World War II combat footage, US-Soviet forces meeting in Germany. Allied Leadership Conference is one of the earliest and most significant examples of US-Russian cooperation occurred during World War II. Despite their ideological differences, the two nations formed an alliance to defeat Nazi Germany and the Axis powers. Known as the Grand Alliance, the United States, the Soviet Union, and the United Kingdom were the main forces fighting against fascism. Lend-Lease Act, US providing military supplies to the Soviet Union through the Lend-Lease Act. The US provided essential military aid to the Soviet Union, which helped the Soviet war effort significantly. This cooperation was pivotal in the Allied victory in Europe. Nuclear arms control, 1960s-1990s. Signing of treaties, nuclear warhead disarmament. US and Soviet diplomats had negotiations during the Cold War. The US and the Soviet Union were locked in a fierce nuclear arms race. However, both nations realized the dangers of nuclear war, leading to several landmark agreements to limit and reduce their nuclear arsenals. Strategic Arms Limitation Talks, SALT I and II. The 1972 SALT I Treaty signing between Nixon and Brezhnev in 1972, the US and the Soviet Union signed the SALT I Agreement, which limited the number of strategic ballistic missile launches. The subsequent SALT II talks sought to build on this progress, although it wasn't fully ratified. Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, INF Treaty. Reagan and Gorbachev signing the treaty in 1987. US President Ronald Reagan and Soviet Premier Mikhail Gorbachev signed the INF Treaty, which eliminated an entire class of nuclear weapons from Europe and marked a key moment of de-escalation in the Cold War. Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, START I and II. The signing of START agreements. The START I Treaty, signed in 1991, further reduced the number of nuclear warheads and long-range missiles. START II, signed in 1993, aimed to continue this trend but was never fully implemented due to the geopolitical climate. Space cooperation, the Apollo-Soyuz mission, 1975. Apollo-Soyuz docking, astronauts and cosmonauts shaking hands in space. In the midst of the Cold War, space became a new frontier of competition between the US and the Soviet Union. But in 1975, the two nations set aside their differences for the historic Apollo-Soyuz test project. The docking in space and the handshake between astronauts and cosmonauts. This mission marked the first time that American astronauts and Soviet cosmonauts worked together in space. It was a symbolic moment of peace and scientific cooperation during a time of global tension. The International Space Station, 1998. Present ISS construction, US and Russian astronauts on board. The US-Russia partnership in space continued long after the Cold War. One of the most significant examples of this is the International Space Station, ISS, which began construction in 1998. The ISS is a joint project involving NASA, Roscosmos, the Russian Space Agency, and other international partners. American and Russian astronauts working together aboard the ISS. To this day, the US and Russia collaborate on the ISS, conducting scientific research and maintaining the station, demonstrating how cooperation in space exploration transcends political rivalries. Joint efforts in counter-terrorism, 2001. Present post 9/11 world, joint US-Russian counter-terrorism operations. After the 9/11 attacks in 2001, the US and Russia found common ground in the fight against global terrorism. Both countries have cooperated in intelligence sharing and counterterrorism efforts, particularly in regions like Afghanistan and Syria. US and Russian military coordination in Syria against ISIS. Although tensions have often arisen due to differing goals, the US and Russia have managed to work together in combating terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, recognizing the shared threat posed by these organizations. Diplomatic cooperation, the Iran nuclear deal, 2015 diplomatic talks, signing of the Iran nuclear deal. In 2015, the US and Russia, along with other world powers, cooperated on one of the most important diplomatic agreements of the decade, the Iran nuclear deal. Officially known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JPOA, the agreement aimed to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. The negotiation table and signing of the deal. Although the US withdrew from the deal in 2018 under President Trump, Russia has continued to play a role in upholding the agreement, and the two countries still communicate on this issue through diplomatic channels. Environmental and climate cooperation. International climate summits, Arctic cooperation. The US and Russia have also found common ground on environmental issues, particularly in the Arctic region, where both countries have a vested interest in managing natural resources and preventing environmental degradation. Arctic Council meetings and joint research efforts. Both nations are part of the Arctic Council, working alongside other countries to promote sustainable development and address climate change in the region. Modern US and Russian relations, moments of tension and cooperation despite their many disagreements and ongoing geopolitical rivalries. The United States and Russia have demonstrated that cooperation is possible when both sides recognize mutual interests. Whether in space, nuclear arms control, or counterterrorism, these instances of collaboration show that even adversaries can find common ground when the stakes are high. US and Russian flags side by side, handshake images. Thank you for watching. We have some amazing videos coming up, so stay tuned for more updates on global geopolitics. And make sure to hit the subscribe button for more.